cabinet ministers went out to scrum a press conference about Tucker Carlson and Danielle Smith. I'm not sure what the federal interest is at all, Danielle Smith being a provincial premier. But apparently this was more important than, for example, the United Kingdom abandoning the trade agreement negotiations with Canada, the terrorist attack in the Edmonton City Hall, or any of half a dozen other matters. This was the most important thing for 4 cabinet ministers, let alone the federal court ruling. So let me show you some of that astonishing 4 cabinet ministers scrum over what a journalist said to a provincial premier. It's just bizarre. They were trying to play the hurt feelings card, and they were trying to claim that Tucker Carlson and Danielle Smith made violent threats. Here, you heard what Tucker and Smith said. Now listen to how the Liberals described it.
So I'm here with my colleagues, Liberal caucus members, ministers all, to talk about what happened last night in Edmonton when the Premier of the province of Alberta, Danielle Smith, invites Tucker Carlson right into the heart of my riding. You can tell a lot about a person by the company they keep. And I have knocked those doors in Edmonton Centre. And I know how progressive a riding Edmonton Centre is. I've represented it since 2015. And for Danielle Smith to bring the mouthpiece of the MAGA conservative far right to Edmonton Centre to spew hate about LGBTQ2 people is beyond the pale. It's deplorable, and we won't stand for it. And I can tell you, it is completely unacceptable for the Premier of any province to say that she wants to put a target on the back of any Canadian politician, and my friend and colleague Steven Guilbeault simply for doing his job. You can have respectful discourse in this country. You can raise the issue. You can bang your fist on a table at a FedProv meeting. That's all legit. But you do not summon the dogs of MAGA conservatism to come and somehow try to scare us and to try to incite violence against politicians of any stripe. It's not acceptable. And if she would take her job seriously, she'd actually be focused on housing, on climate change, on actually solving the issues of Albertans, like forgetting her ridiculous proposal on CPP, instead of trying to summon evil forces from the United States to try to take on one of our colleagues.
I mean, this goes beyond me and the fact that I was targeted last night at this event. This increases political violence against everyone who runs for office in this country, whether they're doing it at the municipal level, at the provincial level, or at the federal level. As my friend and colleague Randy said, like, we can have differences of opinion. We can bang our fist on the table when we meet. We can have strong disagreement. But to incite violence against people who disagree with you, that's not how things should be done in Canada.
Can you clarify what is the violence? What is the violence that I think the minister also said this in French? What is the violence that they are bringing to Canada? What is the political violence that you're talking about? Just to be very clear.
Well, to put a target on someone's back, for example. To name
what is the evil?
To put someone in crosshairs.
That you say they're bringing here.
I mean, spewing hate speech about LGBTQ people, trying to bring the kind of division that they have in the United States north of the border. MAGA-style conservatism has no place in Canada, and it's trying to reach through our borders. And as Minister Rodriguez has said, conservative premiers, instead of doing their jobs, are trying to invite this wave of populism. And I can tell you, it's making newcomers nervous and fearful. People in the LGBTQ2 community do not feel safe. We have people who want to run for office that take a look at what happened last night in Edmonton and say, why bother? And that is not good for the political commons, and it's not good for Canadian democracy.
Mr. Rodriguez, you brought up Pierre Poilievre's name in your comment. I mean, is this going to be your strategy effectively going forward, is tying Pierre Poilievre to Trump?
He wants to be Prime Minister of this country. What happened last night is not acceptable. Is he going to condemn that? If he wants to run for Prime Minister, he should have the courage to condemn those. It's not acceptable in our country.
So is that going to be your strategy? People attended, sir. I mean, what do you make of the fact that there is an audience for it and for their perspective?
Well, as I said in French, the extreme right politics, don't ask the question if it's coming to Canada. It's already here.
Is this gonna
and they're bringing it.
Should he not have been let into the country? You're all familiar with his rhetoric. He's been doing this for years. So what, should he have been stopped at the border?
I think his words should be condemned We cannot accept that in Canada. This is not us, and this will never be. This will never be us.
Are you not contributing to the divide by coming out here and comparing Poilievre to this and making this about him? Are you not contributing to the divide by doing that? If your government has been accused...
We're not comparing Poilievre to him. I think what
You're not? Have you looked at your own advertising from your Liberal Party?
What Mr. Rodriguez just said is he said, I'm asking Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition, to condemn those hateful and violent statement by Tucker Carlson.
But are you not comparing him to Trump?
How are you not comparing it?
Yeah, that's just not what happened. I mean, I was there, at least for the Edmonton speech, and I watched the Calgary speech, and I watched Danielle Smith and Tucker Carlson, and they didn't make any violent threats whatsoever. It was a bizarre attempt to try and put that discussion around the neck of Pierre Poilievre and convince the media that there was violence. Like, it was just so much, well, to use a Liberal word, misinformation. But of course, it worked with Trudeau's base, which these days is really just CBC journalists. The CBC was right there on cue. Here, take a look at this. I'm just going to read the headline. Liberal ministers blast Alberta Premier Danielle Smith for hosting Tucker Carlson. Do not summon the dogs of MAGA conservatism to try and scare us, Liberal cabinet minister says. Okay, well, first of all, you just call people a dog, so stop your division, stop your violent language. And here's my point. Does anyone actually think that those cabinet ministers are scared? Look, do you believe that? Or do you know that they're just being falsely alarmed? Yeah. Here's the CBC's report. Smith's comment was interpreted by Boissonnault as a call for violence, an attempt to summon evil forces from the United States to try and take on one of our colleagues. But was it really? I mean, was it really? Or are you just lying and the CBC being good stenographers? I mean, are the CBC real reporters? Like, would they ask, are you serious? Are you acting? Are you crying wolf? Don't you think this fake reaction undermines any real claims of, violence? No, because they're government journalists on a mission to support their boss, and they're terrified that Pierre Poilievre, if he becomes prime minister, will defund them. Never, ever, ever, ever trust the CBC. They are liars, and they are conjoined with the Liberal Party. Now, it was the same in Alberta. I showed you what happened in Ottawa, but look at this little press conference of some journalist, I'm not sure who this female journalist is, trying to tell the Premier of Alberta who she can and can't talk to. And I thought Danielle Smith's answer was pretty good. Here, take a look.
I do want to ask about your attendance at both of Tucker Carlson's events yesterday. This is somebody who has been accused of defending white supremacy, spreading misinformation about the war in Ukraine, as well as making disparaging remarks about women. So why did you believe that this is someone that you should be giving time and attention to?
Well, I take a wide range of media requests. I'm told by my staff, 96 individual media events or interviews since I got reelected, 24 press conferences. And I don't do a screening test to make sure that every person that interviews me matches 100% of what I believe, and I don't expect that they're going to that would be an appropriate thing to do. So I take a wide range of interviews from CBC all the way through to alternative media, because my job is to get our message out about Alberta. And I told everyone that I wanted to make sure that somebody who has a very loud voice in America knew that we were a partner in being able to provide energy security and energy affordability. And I got that message out.
And of course, in Calgary, the CBC reporter Markisoff had the same thing to say. But imagine the chutzpah. Imagine coming from the CBC, the network of Jian Ghomeshi, the serial abuser of women, or the network of Nora Laredo, that disgusting, macabre necrophile, and all the freaks at the CBC. Imagine if Danielle Smith actually put the CBC proposal into effect and did a deep audit on the morality of any journalist who went to interview her. If Danielle Smith actually took the CBC up on their suggestion and vetted any journalist in advance before talking to them, she wouldn't talk to anyone from the CBC. It's a gross place.